asked with a blend of concern and discomfort, or met with that awkward silence that descends when you dare to broach a deeper subject. But peel back the layers, and the reality is often simpler than it seems. Your evolving mindset disrupts the comfortable inertia of those around you. And let's face it, nobody truly enjoys being confronted with their own stagnation. Perhaps you are experiencing this very phenomenon right now. You've begun to think with newfound independence, act in ways that diverge from the norm, maybe even question long-held beliefs you once accepted without a second thought. Suddenly, you may find yourself feeling isolated, misunderstood, even judged. What they don't tell you, but what the natural world instinctively understands, is that this isolation is often the price of forging a powerful mind. Not just any strength, but a resilience and clarity so profound that it unnerves those who remain entrenched in their routine. It scares them. Without a single word, it exposes the subtle vulnerabilities of those still navigating life on autopilot, merely reacting instead of actively creating. Why does this unsettling dynamic arise? Because a genuinely empowered mind poses a direct challenge to collective mediocrity. And Nietzsche articulated this with chilling clarity. When you embrace independent thought, craft your own values, and relinquish the comforting illusion of pre-packaged truths, you become a force to be reckoned with, a danger to the status quo, a potential disruption to the complacency of others, and perhaps most importantly, a threat to the person you once were. This exploration isn't for the faint of heart. It's not designed for those who seek easy answers or who are content with the familiar. It's tailored for those of you who are wary of being held captive by your own insecurities, who sense the potential for an internal breakthrough, and who are prepared to construct something enduring. A mind that resists manipulation, a mind that inspires awe because it refuses to yield. So, if you resonate with this path, a path that is often solitary, undeniably demanding, but ultimately transformative, then remain. Because what Nietzsche's philosophy can impart may initially challenge your perceptions, but it ultimately holds the key to liberation. After this, your perspective will be irrevocably altered. Nietzsche was more than just a philosopher. He was a surgeon of the human psyche, unafraid to gaze into the abyss of existence, not merely to observe it, but to delve into its depths. And it was within that abyss, that inner turmoil so many instinctively avoid, that he discovered the very source of true strength. For Nietzsche, genuine transformation doesn't arise from tranquility, stability, or rigid order. It stems from embracing pain, navigating the inevitable falls, and confronting the inherent chaos of existence. He famously wrote, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." This isn't merely a poetic sentiment. It's a profound psychological insight. It signifies that if you aspire to cultivate an unshakable mind, you must abandon the naive notion that it will be achieved through constant comfort, superficial motivation, or hollow affirmations. True resilience is forged in the crucible of suffering, when you confront hardship without flinching, when you cease wishing for an easier life, and instead cultivate the desire to become stronger. Reflect on the times you experienced the most profound personal growth. Was it during periods of effortless ease, or was it during moments of profound challenge when you were broken down, disoriented, and forced to rebuild yourself with your own two hands? Nietzsche posited that suffering isn't an aberration of existence, but rather its primary catalyst. He didn't romanticize pain. He recognized it as a vital tool. And if you can redefine your relationship with adversity, with failure, with solitude, you begin to cultivate something truly exceptional, an indomitable spirit. And it is precisely at this juncture that the world begins to feel disconcerted by your presence. While others instinctively flee from chaos, you will learn to navigate its intricacies. While others yearn for the mundane, you will strive for greatness. But this transformation demands a radical departure from conventional notions of strength. True strength isn't about perpetually smiling. It isn't about suppressing or faking emotional control. True strength resides in enduring the unbearable and emerging from the other side even more formidable. However, Nietzsche also understood that chaos alone is insufficient. Without an internal compass, a grounding anchor, you risk being consumed by it. And that is why, in the next phase, we will explore the pivotal moment in Nietzschean philosophy, the declaration of the death of God and the subsequent imposition of the full weight of existential responsibility upon the individual. Because when the comforting illusion of a benevolent overseer vanishes, the universe must be reborn within you. If these concepts resonate with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. When Nietzsche proclaimed, "God is dead," it wasn't a cause for celebration. It was a stark warning, a premonition that many still fail to grasp. The object of his philosophical demise wasn't a divine entity per se. He was dismantling an illusion, the comforting belief in a higher power orchestrating all events, the seductive notion of a preordained plan, a meaning bestowed upon us from an external source. The death of God signifies the end of all excuses, and that realization can be terrifying. Until that point, it was convenient to outsource the responsibility for your life, to believe that all events unfold for a reason, that suffering is an integral part of a divine tapestry, that a greater good will ultimately vindicate all hardships. Nietzsche brutally shatters this comforting facade. He confronts you with the raw truth. You are alone. There is no pre-existing meaning. You are now the architect of your own existence. And it is from this unsettling foundation that the true construction of a powerful mind begins. Many crumble under the weight of this realization, overwhelmed by the prospect of navigating a chaotic world without a roadmap, without guarantees, without a scapegoat to blame. But those who possess the courage to confront this reality head-on, without succumbing to despair, begin to forge an unshakable consciousness. With the death of God, Nietzsche plunges you into the abyss of radical freedom. You are no longer bound by commandments. You must create your own values. You are no longer obligated to obey. You must strive for self-overcoming. It is the genesis of profound autonomy, accompanied by the daunting realization that everything now hinges on your choices. There is no external absolution. There is no guaranteed salvation. You must either build yourself into something formidable or risk sinking into oblivion. But within this daunting prospect lies a profound secret. The very freedom that frightens you also represents the greatest source of power you can wield. When you internalize the understanding that no savior will descend to rescue you, something profound awakens within you, a fierce resolve that propels you to rise even amidst adversity, that compels you to think independently, to feel with authenticity, and to act not because external authorities deem it right, but because your own internal compass dictates it. It is through this radical break from existential dependencies that Nietzsche lays the groundwork for something even more extraordinary: the emergence of a new archetype, a human being who transcends the limitations of the herd, who is not driven by the need for validation or approval. A being who forges their own moral code, who surpasses their perceived limitations, and who lives as a creator rather than a mere consumer. A being whose very existence intimidates the weak, forcing them to confront their own inadequacies. This being bears a name: the Übermensch, the Overman. And it is this archetype that we will now explore, because if you aspire to cultivate a mind so resilient that it defies all attempts to break it, you must understand the principles of becoming this individual who transcends conventional norms, guided solely by their own unwavering will to power. Let's delve deeper into this transformative concept. Nietzsche rejected the notion of gradual and passive human evolution. He championed radical transformation, creative destruction, a complete severing from the past. And it was from this conviction that he conceived the concept of the Übermensch, the Overman. This isn't a superhero. It's not an individual endowed with mystical abilities. The Übermensch is a being who has overcome the constraints that shackle ordinary humans: guilt, blind obedience, herd mentality, the insatiable need for acceptance. The Übermensch doesn't seek validation. They don't request permission to exist. They forge their own internal principles and live by them, even if it means standing in opposition to the entire world. And that is precisely why their mind becomes unbreakable. Because it isn't constructed upon the fickle foundation of others' expectations. It doesn't require external validation to affirm its existence. It is self-sustaining, fueled by its own inherent will to power, the profound impulse to shape reality in accordance with its unique vision. This is the crux of the matter. The Übermensch doesn't adapt to the world. They impose their own meaning upon it. They don't seek comfort. They pursue greatness. They don't ask, "Is this permissible?" They ask, "Is this worthy of me?" And this fundamental shift in perspective alters everything. When you begin to perceive yourself as a creator rather than a servant, the way you think, act, and feel undergoes a complete metamorphosis. But herein lies the challenge. Becoming this type of being demands sacrifice. You will be compelled to dismantle aspects of yourself that still crave approval. You will confront the pain of social alienation. You will bear the burden of constructing your identity from the ground up, without guarantees, without accolades, without the comforting applause of the masses. And the vast majority of people are unable to endure this process. They surrender before they even begin. They retreat to the perceived safety of pre-packaged beliefs, rigid dogmas, and rules dictated by external authorities. The path to becoming the Übermensch is inherently solitary, and Nietzsche was acutely aware of this. He himself lived on the periphery, misunderstood, branded as mad, isolated from the very world he sought to liberate. But it was within that isolation that he discovered his profound freedom. And this is the critical understanding. The stronger your mind becomes, the further you will drift from the prevailing norms. The higher you ascend, the more you will disturb the status quo. The construction of the Übermensch is the most profoundly transformative process anyone can undertake, because it necessitates the destruction of everything that isn't authentically yours, everything that has been imposed upon you by a dysfunctional culture, by a society that rewards conformity and punishes originality. And only after this necessary destruction can you begin to build something truly meaningful. But this construction doesn't occur amidst the clamor of the crowd. It happens in the quietude of solitude, in the deliberate withdrawal that distinguishes the strong from the weak. And that is precisely why, in the next phase, we will delve into the most neglected and arguably the most powerful aspect of this journey, the solitude of the strong. Because the truth is that to cultivate an unshakable mind, you must learn to walk alone. And few are truly prepared for that. Are you? If these insights resonate with you, consider exploring my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It dissects Jung's core principles and provides you with tools to deepen your self-understanding. The link can be found in the pinned comment. If there's a truth often omitted from discussions about mental strength, it's this: the stronger you become, the more profound your sense of solitude may feel. This isn't necessarily a consequence of conscious isolation. Rather, it's because the world around you struggles to reconcile itself with your evolved perspective. Nietzsche articulated this with remarkable precision. The free spirit, the individual who rejects conventional morality, who questions accepted truths, who dares to think independently, inevitably distances themselves from the herd. And while this distancing can be painful, that pain is often a necessary catalyst, because genuine growth requires space, and growth is stifled when tethered to the expectations of others. Most individuals exist within an invisible herd, where every thought is scrutinized, every action measured by the reactions of those around them. They have become accustomed to conformity, to thinking and feeling in alignment with the group, deriving a sense of security from the shared experience. But Nietzsche proposes the antithesis of this. He tears you away from that comfortable conformity and thrusts you into the wilderness. In that wilderness, there are no external validations, no words of praise, no guiding hand. There is only you, your doubts, your unresolved traumas, your deepest fears, your overwhelming desire to simply give up. And that is where the true test begins. What will most people do? They will retreat. They will seek refuge behind their masks. They will feign indifference, suppressing their thoughts, their feelings, their very perceptions. But you, if you genuinely aspire to cultivate a mind that is impervious to external pressures, must remain steadfast. You must endure the silence that unveils your authentic self. Nietzsche famously stated, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." That is the essence of the matter, the profound act of self-possession, the rarest and most empowering achievement one can attain. Because when you genuinely possess yourself, no external force can exert control over you. No one can dictate your worth, and no one can diminish your spirit. But this self-possession comes with the weight of solitude. You will inevitably lose connections with some individuals. You will encounter persistent misunderstanding. You will be labeled as arrogant, eccentric, aloof. They will attempt to coerce you back into the familiar mold. They will dismiss you as crazy, heartless, insensitive. But that is the inevitable cost of resisting domestication. It is the price of not requiring external validation. It is the price of refusing to live as a mere reflection of others' desires. And here is the unvarnished truth. If you cannot withstand solitude, you are not yet ready for genuine freedom. Because all true freedom necessitates a degree of abandonment. The abandonment of emotional dependencies, the abandonment of comforting illusions, the abandonment of relationships built on mere utilitarianism. That's why Nietzsche viewed solitude as a privilege, a crucible where the authentic self finally has the space to emerge. But this liberated mind, this elevated spirit, doesn't merely walk alone. It begins to perceive realities that remain hidden from the masses. And with that heightened perception comes the second inevitable consequence, the confrontation with mediocrity. As you cultivate strength, the collective mediocrity senses your divergence and instinctively reacts. And that is precisely what we will explore next, the inherent threat of collective mediocrity. Because the world doesn't celebrate those who conform. It targets those who dare to stand apart. Nietzsche didn't fear tyrannical leaders, authoritarian regimes, or overt oppressors. His philosophical ire was reserved for the more insidious and corrosive influence of collective mediocrity, that pervasive and often invisible system that enforces conformity, that punishes those who dare to challenge the status quo, that rewards obedience and disguises cowardice as virtue. True tyranny, according to Nietzsche, doesn't emanate from above. It arises from the collective pressure of the crowd, demanding that you remain small so that they aren't forced to confront their own stagnation. And that is precisely what transpires when you begin to stand out, when your mind becomes sharper, your spirit more resolute, your presence more unsettling. You begin to disrupt, not because you are acting immorally, but because you are engaging in something extraordinary. You are breaking free from the constraints of the mold, and society often resents those who do. Collective mediocrity cannot tolerate individual brilliance, because that brilliance exposes the inherent darkness of ordinary existence. Nietzsche labeled this phenomenon slave morality, a moral framework constructed by those who, lacking the capacity for greatness, opt to invert traditional values. They reframe strength as arrogance, ambition as selfishness, independence as coldness, and by doing so, they create a moral system that protects the vulnerable and condemns the strong. But make no mistake, this isn't driven by compassion, it's fueled by resentment. Because the weak don't necessarily desire to be elevated, they often seek to diminish the strong. That is why, when you embark on a journey of self-liberation, you will invariably encounter resistance. Sometimes overt, sometimes subtle, expressed through glances, silences, ironic remarks. But the message remains constant. Rejoin the group. You are making us feel inadequate. And you are doing so unintentionally, simply by being your authentic self. Nietzsche recognized that most individuals exist in a state of paralyzing conformity, an existence molded by fear, guilt, and unquestioning obedience. And anyone who dares to challenge this state is perceived as a threat to the established order. But don't be deceived. Mediocrity doesn't attack with brute force. It attacks with numbers, with consensus, with the unrelenting weight of repetition. It will attempt to undermine your self-confidence. It will make you question your own sanity for not fitting in. It will deploy every available social mechanism, from shame to outright exclusion, to coerce you into conformity. And it is at this critical juncture that many succumb to the pressure, unable to endure the label of being strange, difficult, arrogant. But Nietzsche would bestow upon you a different designation, necessary, because while the world often revolves around recycled ideas, manufactured desires, and comforting illusions, it is the strong individual who provides the necessary disruption for something new to emerge. Your uniqueness is the spark of transformation, but it is also the focal point of resistance. Cultivating strength, thinking independently, living autonomously. All of this represents an act of defiance against collective mediocrity. And like any act of defiance, it requires preparation. It requires weapons, not physical ones, but mental ones. And that is precisely what we will explore now in the final stage. Because while there is a significant cost associated with cultivating a mind so strong that it inspires fear, there is also a reward that no external force can ever diminish. In the next section, you will come to understand both the price and the profound power of becoming unbreakable. You've made it this far. That already distinguishes you from the vast majority. Most individuals would have abandoned this exploration at the first sign of discomfort. They would have retreated at the first suggestion of personal challenge. They would have dismissed it the moment they realized it wasn't designed to merely stroke their ego. This is a call to action, an invitation for those who are prepared to relinquish comforting illusions and confront reality with unflinching honesty. Because cultivating a mind so resilient that it evokes fear isn't simply a choice, it's a renunciation. You will experience loss. You will lose friendships predicated on superficiality. You will forfeit opportunities that demand subservience. You will relinquish the ability to be content with the mundane. But in exchange, you will gain something invaluable: integrity, clarity, authenticity. You will begin to observe that most individuals live in a perpetual state of slumber, and that your lucidity is unsettling, that your resolve unnerves others, that your absence speaks volumes louder than the presence of many. This strength doesn't originate from external sources. It isn't imparted by self-help gurus, nor is it earned through hollow platitudes or empty affirmations. It is unearthed from the depths of the soul, in the solitude of difficult nights, in the choices made when no one is watching. It is the culmination of an internal battle between the person you once were and the person you are striving to become. And this battle is perpetual, because the truly strong aren't those who have achieved some final victory. They are those who continue to fight even when they could choose to simply stop. Nietzsche didn't seek to cultivate followers. He sought to trigger internal revolutions. He wanted you to cease begging for approval, to stop pleading for meaning, to stop searching for answers in pre-packaged systems when genuine understanding can only be forged through effort, self-awareness, and personal sacrifice. He wanted you to become dangerous, not in a destructive sense, but in a rare and profound sense. So rare that your very existence compels others to confront the aspects of themselves they are desperately trying to avoid. And now, I want to invite you to engage in an activity that will solidify this transformative process. Share in the comments a truth you are tired of concealing, an opinion you are afraid to articulate, a thought that evokes feelings of isolation, but that fundamentally represents who you are. This is an integral part of the journey, asserting your voice, making your presence known, and, more importantly, declaring that you will no longer compromise your authentic self. And if this resonates with you, if something within you has awakened, don't stop here. The next chapter is just as crucial, perhaps even more so. It builds upon this foundation, and if you have persisted this far, you know you aren't merely watching out of curiosity. You are here because something within you has already begun to transform. So, continue onward. You are not alone. You are simply further along the path. And that, my friend, is both frightening and profoundly liberating. So, to bring it all home, what we've really been exploring here is the journey toward becoming the strongest, most authentic version of yourself. It's about shedding the expectations of others, embracing the chaos within, and forging a resilient mind that's guided by your own internal compass. It's about owning your power and living a life of purpose, even when it feels like you're walking a path less traveled. Think of it as self-optimization through a lens of AI philosophy of self, integrating ancient wisdom with a modern understanding of our cognitive clarity. It's a challenging but ultimately liberating path, one that leads to a life of genuine meaning and fulfillment. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What resonated most with you from this exploration of Nietzsche and the Overman? Do you have any questions about applying these concepts to your own life? Or want to share your own experiences with cultivating mental strength and conscious living? Leave a comment below and let's continue the conversation. I am trying to find time perception concepts that would change the way I perceive time in a positive way. And if you found this discussion valuable and want to dive deeper into similar neuroscience content that will empower you on your journey of self-discovery and understanding, then please subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss out on future explorations of philosophy, psychology, and the quest for a truly unshakable mind. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, the journey inward is the greatest adventure of all.